I am so excited to share this month's Homeschool Mom Chat with Jessica from the Waldock Way. We sat down and had a conversation about interest-led learning in homeschool and why this is so important and impactful for our kids. She also gave some really practical advice for homeschool moms like myself who tend to lean more type A, and we thrive on things like structure and routine and follow a more traditional approach in our homeschool. But at the same time, I want to make sure that I'm including interest-led learning because I know it is so good for my kids. So make sure you catch that part if you identify with me. As always, be sure to give this video a thumbs up and please make sure you're subscribed to Morning Basket Music because it really does help the channel grow. All right, let's jump into my Homeschool Mom Chat with Jessica. Welcome to the Morning Basket Music channel. I'm Leanne, a homeschool mom of 2 kids and a music educator. And today I am thrilled to be joined by a special guest, Jessica from the Waldock Way. Welcome and thank you for being here, Jessica.
Hey, Leanne, thank you so much for having me.
So I know you have been homeschooling for nearly a decade now, and there's probably a lot of moms out there watching this who are already familiar with you and all your wonderful resources, but just in case somebody new might be watching today, would you take a moment and just introduce us to yourself and your family and tell us where you're at in your homeschooling journey right now?
Sure. So I am Jessica from the Waldock Way. My husband and myself have been homeschooling Emily since the very beginning. For the first 5 years, he was working full-time outside of the home, and in the last 5, he has come home and joined us. So he kind of tag teamed some things with us. We homeschool an only child. She is currently, at the time of recording this, in 8th grade and 13 years old. We didn't set out to homeschool. We like to say that we just kind of fell into it. And originally we said, okay, well, we'll, reevaluate every year. We've never reevaluated. This has worked. It's been exactly what we needed in our homeschool and in our family. And it serves all of us very, very well. So I don't foresee us doing anything except homeschooling all the way through.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't know that. So I wasn't sure like if you already had a teaching background or what were you doing when she was little?
So when she was little, I actually did photography full time,
Okay.
like weddings, events, all kinds of things. So
Mm-hmm.
it looked a lot like me having her home Monday through Friday and then Kevin
Mm-hmm.
being home with her on the weekends while I was doing, weddings and baby showers and large events. And that worked fine, but it became like, well, me and him were never seeing each other, right? We were kind of passing ships in the night. So eventually, I think Emily was 3.5 or 4 when I quit doing photography on that kind of level and being able to stay home more to be with him.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Well, today, Jessica, we are going to kind of center our conversation around interest-led learning. But before we actually dive into that, I'm curious to hear more about your experience in homeschooling over the last 10 years. So I'm sure that from the time you started to now, there probably have been some of those things kind of like pillars in your homeschool that you have kept consistent that have remained over the years. And then there's probably some other things because we all change as our kids grow older where we sort of shift our mindset and we decide to do some things different. So can you kind of tell us about each area? What are some of the things that you have consistently done over the years in your homeschool, and where are some areas where you've changed?
Well, consistently interest-led learning is probably one of the biggest. It's the thing that kind of has been like the rock of our homeschool the entire time, or the foundation.
Mm-hmm.
Other things that have been pillars in our homeschool have been unit studies, which again, for us, fall back to interest-led learning. Morning baskets, which have now become just basket time because as Emily has gotten older, they happen later and later. Now we're around lunch and early afternoon. So
Mm-hmm.
we finally dropped morning and it's just basket time.
Yeah.
And then I would say probably subscription boxes. That's something that Kevin does with Emily almost on a weekly basis. What subscription boxes they get have changed over the years, but that has been like their kind of consistent. Kevin likes to say that the toys when he was a kid stink in comparison to the toys or the things nowadays. So he gets to relive his childhood while teaching her kind of all at the same time.
Yeah.
Um, and I would say the things that have changed have been the biggest has probably been me needing outside validation. And because of that, a lot of other things have changed. For example, we started a co-op, or we started going to a co-op when Emily was younger, because when you're homeschooling an only child, the first thing is always, well, what about socialization? And
Right.
I felt almost guilted I mean, that's not a great word, but I did. I kind of felt guilted into needing to do that because I must be failing her if I wasn't. And it wasn't a good fit for her, for our family. So because of me, like at the beginning, I felt like I needed to validate. I no longer need that, or I don't, how do I put it? Things roll off my back differently now. I've been doing it long enough. I've learned to trust myself and be like, okay, you can have your opinion, but it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
And so because of that, we don't have to do we don't please other people. So we only do what serves our homeschool. I would say that's probably been the biggest thing that's changed over the years.
Yeah. Well, that's huge. That's a positive change. And definitely, I think we all know this. There's a lot of wisdom that comes with experience. And you do start to kind of narrow down your values, I would say, and what's really the most important thing. Because we're all tempted. When we start out, we want to have all our ducks in a row and we want all the things to be perfect. And then it doesn't take very long before you just have to start loosening the grip on some of those things and stop the comparison game. So yeah, that's huge. All right. So when I think about interest-led learning, you are definitely somebody that comes to my mind right away. So whether it's the things that you've shared about game schooling or strewing, or, it just comes through in all these resources that you create, your unit studies and stuff like that. Jessica, why do you believe that interest-led learning is so powerful for kids?
Okay, I'm going to tell you why I believe that, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit of backstory before we go on to the next question. So I believe that interest-led learning is powerful because curiosity is like literally the engine of real education. When kids care about something, they're naturally motivated to dig deeper, to ask better questions, and to actually remember what they've learned. It stops being about checking boxes, which unfortunately has been something like I have fallen into over and over in my homeschool, is like just checking the box, just to be checking the box. And it becomes more about like discovery and actual like real learning. I've seen this with Emily over and over again. When she's passionate about something, for example, wolves or archery or a book that she's reading, she will willingly, like without me having to ask, spend hours researching, writing, or making those connections across subjects, like those ones that we dream of, right? And she just does it on her own. That kind of ownership is what creates a lifelong learner, which was a huge part of our vision statement when we started homeschooling, that we wanted to raise a lifelong learner. And so that we knew would lean into that. And so honestly, for us, that's the goal of our homeschooling, right? Like not just to get it through a curriculum or to check the boxes, but to raise a kid who loves to learn and who remembers what they've learned. And so the story I wanted to say that is when Kevin and I started homeschooling, we kept both of us have complete traditional schooling backgrounds, right? Like we don't know anybody who homeschools. We didn't have any experience. And he would come home from work and he'd be like, what did you guys do today? And he would expect like a pile of papers on the table, right? Because that's all he knew. He didn't know anything different. He wasn't reading the books or watching the YouTube videos or reading blog posts or any of that. And so I did that for a little while to like satisfy him so that he would feel included and know what we did. And then eventually I sat down and I was like, can we have a conversation? He's like, of course. And I said, what do you remember about school? Like, honestly, I don't mean like your friends or lunch or, but like, what do you remember from your education? And he immediately started like spouting off history facts, which, by the way, my husband's a history buff. Like, that's his thing. And I said, okay, I remember zero history. Why? Because it was boring to me, right? Like, it was names and facts and dates, and I don't want any part of that. What I did remember was like algebra, math. I loved it because I'm good at math and I enjoyed it. It interested me. So at the end of our conversation, I was like, now can you imagine if your entire education was centered around things that you were interested in, and 20, 30 years from now, you remembered 80% of what you were taught because you were interested, because everything he remembered was things that interested him, and what I remembered was things that interested me. And he was kind of like in that moment, like, okay, I'll give it a try. Sure, why not? Because honestly, I mean, I don't want to have to teach things 10 times or waste my breath or, try to drill and kill. If I can find a way to teach the same things in a way that are interesting to her and she would remember them, it would help her love learning. I mean, it just felt more time efficient, right? Like it's time efficient and it's going to create a better environment, in my opinion, because we both are going to be not frustrated.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you shared that. We this weekend I was having a similar conversation with my husband, also named Kevin, by the way, also a history buff. But we were talking about the science that we've been using this year, and right now we're kind of doing this unit on chemistry, and it was getting to this point in the reading where I was like, this just seems a little advanced, even for my kids' age. I don't think we're going to go here. We're going to pivot a little bit and kind of put that for a later time. But it got us talking about the subject of chemistry. And I literally asked him, like, if you were given some high school chemistry problems, like equations to work on right now, do you think you would be able to do them? You know, or what value did that add to your life? You know, just given the field of work that you're in right now. So my belief on that is, you know, and my kids, I don't know what they're going to do in the future. They may be in a field of study where that would be applicable. It would be useful for them. But until they get to that point, you know, I just kind of came to the conclusion that they can learn those things when it's necessary or when they want to, right? When it becomes needed for their job or their interests or whatever, they will have the skills to get there. But I don't want to do too much right now where, again, I'm trying to front load all these things just because their curriculum says that's what we're supposed to be covering. You know, it's like if and when they want to learn it, they will be able to. They will have plenty of resources out there, you know?
Well, and on that same topic, that's something else, and this is, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of like answer this because this is going to be the next, or a question.
Yeah.
Is with interest-led learning, one of the things that I hear a lot is like, oh, but what about gaps? Right? Like, what if your kid only wants to learn about animals and they never want to learn about chemistry, right? What if your kid never wants to learn about chemistry? Well, more than likely, if I've exposed her to it at least, because I mean, at some point you have to expose them because maybe they don't even know it exists. If I've exposed her to it and she isn't interested, then more than likely she's probably not going to go into a field that's going to be chemistry based, right? Or, I mean, I just doubt it. But even if she did, if I have taught her how to learn, just like you just said, she's going to figure it out. I mean, I'm almost 40 years old and I'm still learning new stuff all the time. Like,
absolutely.
There's no way in the 18 years that your child's under your house and in the 13 years max that you're homeschooling them, that you're going to teach them everything they need to know for the rest of their life. You're not. There's going to be gaps. Public school kids have gaps. Private school kids have gaps. Like, it's impossible. You can't teach them everything. But if you teach them things that they're interested in, they're at least going to resonate, connect with them, and they're going to retain them, which means that you didn't waste yours or their time. Otherwise, you would be sitting there and you could teach your kids chemistry, and then they're going to get out there in the real world and be like, yeah, I took some chemistry class, but I don't remember it. So, I mean, really, like you said, did it really matter? Like,
yeah. And talk about being time efficient. Yeah, let's spend times on the things that they really are going to remember and they're going to soak up, you know?
Or the things that are maybe more important to you, right? Yeah. Like maybe for you, it's like, you know what, instead of chemistry, we could do, I don't know, nature, because we could walk out in our backyard and connect with what's right outside. Like, you know, maybe it's not even necessarily interest, which is great, but maybe it's interest on your side, because you get to take both of those things into consideration.
Yeah, that's a great point. I do want to move a little bit into the practical side of things. So when we're thinking about planning for homeschool, whether it's the weekly plans or looking at the entire month or maybe even the entire school year, how much do you try to be flexible and go with your daughter's interests? Like, for example, are you very flexible where if she shows real interest in something, you're like, I'm willing to drop the lesson plans for today and just follow that rabbit trail? Or are you more on like the type A side where, this is going to sound funny, but it's sometimes I feel like I have to plan to be spontaneous, if that makes sense. Like only on Fridays. On Fridays we'll do the, you know, the interesting stuff. Where do you kind of fall on that spectrum?
This is really weird because of the two of us, I am the more like, let's wing it. And Emily is the more like, I need a plan.
Interesting.
So it's opposite. I mean, I love to plan. I love planning. I love color coding. I love all of that. But I have learned over the years that the person who makes the plans and the person who follows the plans are two very different people. And it's okay for me to just enjoy planning. I have learned that that's just a hobby of mine. And whether I follow it or not is another story. But Emily likes a plan. She likes a rhythm. She likes a routine. She likes dependability. We just say that she's our quirky kid because she thrives on that, and like big time. So recently I have found a way to kind of give her that routine and dependability while still giving flexibility so that we can follow her interest, or I can even change what we're doing. And that's with blocks. So we kind of have like a block of her doing independent work and a block of us doing our basket time and a block of, us doing table time. And what happens during all of those times might look different, right? So during basket time for her, that's just me reading aloud and her doing something with her hands. So if yesterday, let's say, for example, we spotted a butterfly out the window that was really, really cool, maybe I changed the books that I'm going to read that day to the butterfly. She maybe was like, oh, that was a really cool butterfly or whatever. I can kind of work within those dependable blocks of hers to do that. We do still very, very much take her interest into consideration, even with our overall planning. So this year she has asked specifically, like we sat down over the summer, and she asked specifically for myths. She really wanted to do, a few years ago we did Percy Jackson and Greek mythology. So she really wanted to dig into some of the others. And so right now we're doing Kane Chronicles, which is another Rick Riordan series, and Egyptian mythology. And the plan, unless her interest changes, is to do Magnus Chase and Norse mythology. And I have planned so far that like we're literally creating a study around that. But if she was to tell me over the Christmas holidays, Mom, I don't want to do that, I want to do something else, I would just pivot and we would do something else.
Yeah.
Her interest typically, like I would say when she was younger, I find this is something else that I was not expecting. Her interest-based thing was like a week was her max, right? Yeah. And then as she got older, it became like a month. Now it's closer to like, it takes 3 months if she's, genuinely interested in something to feed her enough. And I think that that's something else that, obviously I didn't know because I hadn't been there yet, but I've watched as she's gotten older, it's like it takes longer and more information to like, for her to get her feel. Maybe her attention span is just better too, though.
Now, I do have a question, maybe sort of playing devil's advocate a little bit. Do you ever feel like you fall into the trap of trying to make everything a lesson? Like if she just comes with something random, you're like, oh, let's look up all the things on that. And then maybe that almost kind of stops her from still wanting to do that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Well, I'm not as bad anymore, but it's because I made a rule for myself, which we'll talk about. But yes, so many times would she be like, especially if I thought it was a really cool one, right? Like something that I could really work with. And she'd be like, oh, this is cool. And then I would like buy all of the books or all the things. And then she's like, it was cool. Like for the 2 seconds we talked about it. Or a field trip, right? Like we're going to go on a field trip. So I'm like going to turn that into a whole thing.
Right.
So yes, absolutely. What I have learned to do, the rule I have made for myself, and this is 100% a me problem. This is not a her problem, right?
Yeah.
It's one me, is that I match my level of investment with her level of interest. So, for example, if there was vultures getting into our garbage can one day, right? Like literally turkey vultures digging into our stuff. She's like, Mom, what are those birds? So we Googled it, right? Because her question was, what are those birds? Google answered that question. And then it was like, they're so weird looking, and she asked another question. So then I was like, hey, there's a quick YouTube video. You want to watch this? Yeah. And then like the next day there was another question, like, you want to go to the library and get a few books? Yeah, that would be fun. And then it stopped. So I stopped. Yeah. So that is the thing I have learned is not, and I don't just mean like my time investment. I mean my time investment, my money, my monetary investment, like everything for me, the amount of time and effort and money that I will put into something is her level of interest. And I've learned that that's with everything, not just a unit study. So like, for example, she mentioned, I think it'd be kind of cool to learn to play a guitar. I found a person who would teach guitar lessons that had a guitar. And I'm like, you can go try it before I go spend a couple $100 buying you a guitar that's going to sit in your closet that you're never going to play again. She loved it. She got a guitar a few months later for her birthday. So far, she's been taking lessons for 6 months or 4 months and loves it. So, but that's kind of, and it's a rule I had to make for me because I would be so excited and so ready to just dive in 100%. I would be like hours of my time and so much effort designing something and then so much money buying all the things.
It's easy to fall into the trap. And somehow we think it makes us like a better homeschool mom because it's like, look at all the learning opportunities I've provided you with. But yeah, they will very quickly change their minds. I found that too. All All right, so another piece of practical advice. Let's talk to the type A homeschool moms out there, or even just people who want to follow a more traditional approach using curriculum, but they also do see the value in interest-led learning. What are some practical things that, like, ways we can start working that into our weekly rhythm?
Well, you don't have to choose one or the other. Obviously, you can blend them both. If you love the security of a traditional curriculum, you can keep it. But I wouldn't be afraid to pause it when curiosity sparks. So if your child asks a great question or they showed an interest in a topic, let yourself and your child chase it, right? Even if it's for a day or two, the curriculum is still going to be there. But those rabbit trails are what your child's going to remember. And the curriculum, I would say, is more of the spine, and the curiosity could be the spark that makes it come alive. So let's say, for example, I don't know. Give me a curriculum you use.
Let's see. We're using Apologia right now for science.
Okay, which topic?
Chemistry and physics.
Okay, so let's pretend that's what you're using.
Okay.
And somewhere in physics, you get to a section about a roller coaster. They just mention that, roller coasters happen to be a great real life example of physics. And your kid is like, wow, that seems really cool, right? Pause for a day or two, dive deeper into that. So maybe you find a book about it. Maybe you watch a YouTube video about it. Maybe they're still really into it. And so you're like, what would be really cool is if we went and rode some roller coasters. So you take a field trip. In fact, we did this at Disney because and this was accidental, Emily was 6 and we were learning about physics, which was not on my radar. Because one of the employees, she'd asked for the front row, very kindly, and they were like, well, you know what, you can have it, but you have to wait a whole train, but I have the back row. And they were like, and the back is faster. So she, of course, said yes, because she's my little daredevil. But when we got off the roller coaster, she grabs my hand, she looks at me, Mommy, so serious. How can the back be faster? If that was true, it would ram through the front. And I died laughing because I'm like, you're right, it would, theoretically. But I had to explain that it felt faster is what he meant. And then we dug into physics a little. It gave her answer. We moved on. It wasn't a big thing. But that's something you could do. You could go to the park and you could, ask for the front row, ride the back row. You could turn it into this mild, don't go too in depth, but a mild science experiment. Which do you think is going to feel faster and why? And then maybe that's Thursday and Friday. You come back Monday and you go right back to your curriculum, right? It doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be pause, dig a little deeper, and then come back to it.
Yeah, I love that. And it's really focused on just using your everyday experiences or just things that are already happening in your life, and not overly make a learning opportunity, but to draw those connections for them. Are you familiar with the concept of planning from behind? Is that something you've ever done? Yeah.
Yeah. So we did that a lot when Emily was younger. I would say probably through elementary. It was more difficult, I learned, as she got older, not because she was older, but because she wanted that more what are we going to do today? So me being I don't know, let's see what we get into. Doesn't work for her. In fact, I was just talking to somebody else about how their kid is give me everything. I'm going to do it as quickly as possible. That's not Emily either. If I was to be here's the 20 things I want you to do this week. And if you finish them all on Monday, you can have the rest of the week free. She would spend the entire week looking at the list stressed about which one does she start first. She wants the freedom of being able to follow her interests, but she also wants the predictability of this is what we're going to do each day. Yeah. So I guess now I'm kind of a mix. Because I have a base of what we're going to do, but also I talked about those time chunks. So let's say that my base includes, I don't know, whatever my base includes today, right? We're going to do fix-it grammar and a vocabulary lesson for our table time. But we got done in an hour, and our block is supposed to be 2 hours. Emily's going to want to sit at the table for 2 hours because that's what it said. So that's where I would have let's pull some games. Let's pull an extra book. Let's pull a subscription box, whatever. And so in that case, then I would write that stuff down afterwards, right? I have a base plan, and then any extra becomes the plan from reverse. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. That seems like a really good blend. And I certainly don't do it all the time with the planning from behind, but I have tweaked it to where I still write out my lesson plans or what I think we're going to get done for the week. But I also try and sometimes intentionally just observe what they're doing in their own time throughout the day. And jotting those things down that didn't come from a book, that weren't part of the original plan, but it is not to validate to other people, but really just for myself, to look at the whole big picture of their day and of their education, and to go like, they are learning things all the time, or they're practicing skills all the time. And so whether that's writing down, he spent an hour in his room designing a Hot Wheels track, or, even stuff from like a play date, and they checked on this kid who got hurt and they're practicing their social skills. It's just the little things like that I think we don't always think of as being part of their education. But when we look at it like that from a big picture perspective, it's like, gosh, they're going to be just fine. They're
Wait
getting
until
so
they
much
get
out of
older,
it.
because I swear, like 90% of our best learning now that Emily's in like that teenage is conversations, which are not quantifiable, right?
Yeah.
Like I can't
Yeah.
turn in a conversation in my portfolio or whatever. So yes, I will
Right.
easily jot down, because we have had some of the some in-depth, deep context, just in the conversations that we have. And normally it's in the conversations from like our house to guitar lessons, right? Because that's a 20-30 minute drive for us. And we just randomly will talk about, for example, we were listening to a song and they made a reference that I missed. I didn't even hear it. And it was probably because it's not my style of music. Her and her dad like more like rock and roll. Anyway, they made a reference to something that she thought was a reference to the Great Depression in the song. And so she asked, like, was that what they're talking about? And I said, oh, I don't know. I wasn't listening. So she looked up the lyrics and she's reading it, words to me. And I was like, oh, yeah, that would be a reference to the Great Depression. Obviously, I had no intention. I mean, we're studying mythology in ancient Egypt right now. That wasn't something we were going to learn. But we had a whole 30-minute in-depth talk about the Great Depression because of a song we listened to. Again, I did not go out and do an entire unit study on it, though, because that was the extent of her interest. So my investment stopped there.
Oh, I love that. That's a perfect example. All right. Before we start to wrap this up, we've touched a little bit on using curriculum, but I know you also are a proponent of it doesn't always have to be curriculum, right? I've looked on your website. I know you've written some parent guides for different ways to kind of homeschool outside the box, where it doesn't have to be curriculum is the main thing, right? Like you called it a spine. So can you give us some of the ways that you found to homeschool effectively, even without using any type of formal curriculum?
With other resources. So I would say in our homeschool, we replaced, for the most part. Now, let me go ahead and say that in elementary, I think you could probably use no curriculum. Once we hit middle school, we have definitely had a math for a spine, because I think at some point math builds and it's just easier. Yeah. So we have definitely used math curriculum for all of our middle school years. But the majority of what we use would be books, games, subscriptions, hands-on activities, and experiences. So like field trips, going out and actually standing where they stood in a historic spot, or going to the zoo to learn about, the science and animals. And I love it. And so does she. And I think, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with curriculum, because there's some amazing, really great curriculum out there. But I think for me and for her both, it's more of that living, right? Like the living book versus the textbook. It's that, it's that style. That's the atmosphere that we wanted. And curriculum has never been able to give, at least not like the box typical curriculum, right? I mean, there are some fantastic ones out there, and there's some awesome unit studies out there that are topic-based, that dig into books and games and all of these wonderful things. But I think it's just using your resources, because at the end of the day, your curriculum is nothing more than a tool as well, right? Like it's a resource. It's not meant to be the master and tell you what to do. I mean, I know sometimes we do need to be told what to do, but at the end of the day, it's still you're the master and you get to just use it as a resource. So I like replacing that by things that are just more fun, that we'll enjoy, like reading aloud together and playing games together. Because just about any topic that I could find curriculum on, I can find, books, games, and hands-on activities, or an art project, or a science experiment, or something that's just more fun.
Yeah. I mean, again, I'm exhibit A here. I think when we start out, and especially when we come from a traditional school background like I do, and I taught in a public school, I think initially we feel like we need that. Not as a master, but it's like, I need someone telling me what to do, making sure I'm staying accountable. But I think that we just have to grow into our confidence in what we're doing. And again, looking at the big picture of their education and going, just because it didn't come from a textbook or a whatever checklist, they are getting so much out of it, and they're going to benefit in the long run because you're right. If it matters to them, it will stick, and
Mhm.
it will stick with them for a lifetime. All right, Jessica, I'm just going to throw a random curveball at you for this last question here.
Go ahead.
So you're homeschooling an 8th grader this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. What is something in particular about this year that you are most excited about homeschooling your daughter?
Oh, that is a curveball. I still think it would probably be the conversations because, like, okay, so obviously when I homeschooled elementary school, I loved it, right? Like, it was very hands on. Like, I mean, you see it everywhere on social media. Like, it's very colorful, it's hands on, there's manipulatives, there's so much fun, so much. And I really, like, I remember, especially like this, like eighth, 7th, 8th through 12th. Like, I remember because I'm huge into games and subscriptions and hands on, like, that's how we homeschool. So I remember, like, I was looking for older stuff for older kids. And I was like, gosh, there's just not as much. And I was almost getting sad. Like, I knew we would still homeschool, but I was like, I'm sad for these years. Like, it's not going to be as fun for her or for me. And I was also kind of sad. Like, she turned 13 this year, right? Like, she's a teenager. She's not a baby anymore. And just, anyway, everything about it felt sad. It felt like my days as a homeschool mom were dwindling. I'm more towards the end than the beginning now, and things aren't as fun. And then I was like, but you know what? Like, she's really become cool. Like, she's not like this kid anymore. Like, she's her own really awesome person who has her own opinions, whether I agree with all of them or not. And so the conversations that we have, like, I can't quantify them, and I can't even explain how amazing they are. But, like, sometimes she'll just, like, knock me off my feet, and I'm like, are you sure you're only 13? Because she's having just these in-depth, awesome, like, full person opinions and conversations. And so I think at this point, that's probably, like, maybe, I mean, I'll always be her parent, but that shift at this point in that age where you're almost shifting more from parent to friend, right? Or at least peer. You become more of a peer. So that has been, like, really cool for me because she's been involved more in our homeschool because of that, right? Like, she has more of an opinion. Whereas when she was younger, it was me strewing to figure out what it was that she was interested in, and then me kind of, like, pulling her interest out of her. And I think now, because we've been doing interest-led learning for so long, she's willingly, like, openly can say, like, hey, I want to learn about this, which makes my job so much easier, right? Because she's just saying, like, I want to learn about this, or I want to do this, or I don't really enjoy that anymore. And she has, and those opinions steer our homeschool in a way that make it more what she wants, right? Like, because when they're younger, I feel like they don't know what they want, and it's more you trying to figure it out for them. And then, like, at this point, she, like, figuring out for herself. And I mean, it's still a little bittersweet because, like, she's becoming but I really enjoy the extra opinions and the conversations and her having, like, I guess it's more autonomy, of herself and in our homeschool. And, like, I'm just kind of really curious to see where it takes us in the next few years, like, where we end up through the next 5 years, 4.5, whatever. It's not long enough, but
I love that. And I think that's, it does give moms hope because I know exactly what you mean. It feels like when you leave the elementary years, all the cutesy stuff has kind of gone away, and now we have to study all the serious subjects or, whatever. But I 100% agree with that. And I meant to bring this up at the beginning, talking about kind of the pillars in our own homeschool. For us, and I know for you too, one of those has been read alouds. And I am so thankful that I got the advice very early on from older moms or who had been down that path to say, just because your kid learns how to read and they become an independent reader does not mean you should stop reading aloud to them, even, like, all the way through high school. And so I have definitely continued to read to my kids, and they both are strong readers. They love reading on their own. But that's the piece. It's the discussion piece now that was not there before when they were younger, And because they're getting older and developing their own interests, they pick out a lot more interesting stuff to read that then they come back and tell me about. And so it is just a really cool piece that maybe we're not aware of when they're little. We think, like, oh, once the picture book's in, it's just like the fun is over. And it's totally not. It's totally not.
I feel like it changes, right? Like, but also, I mean, you start dealing with hormones and stuff. And so like I feel
True.
like it's all this negative. Like the teen years are like, terrible twos. And let's be honest, 13s are right there with it, right? I mean, they don't have a name, but they might as well be. And so I'm not going to say I wasn't looking forward to them, but I dreaded them almost maybe a little bit. I thought our homeschool won't be as fun. She's not going to want to hang out with me. Like all of these things that people like make you fear almost. And it's been absolutely the opposite. Like, I mean, yes, she spends a little bit more time with her friends, but I mean, because we already had that relationship foundation from the fact that we've homeschooled all these years, she didn't pull away like a typical teenager. She has her own fun, interesting opinions and, reads some really awesome things. And I also love the discussions, but also the connection. Like we, for example, Kevin and Emily love Lord of the Rings, like the movies, Lord of the Rings, all of them. It's not my cup of tea. But Emily begged me to read The Hobbit to her. So we've been reading The Hobbit as a family at bedtime. And of course they're dying laughing because I don't know if have you read The Hobbit?
It's been a long time.
Okay, well.
I haven't read it to them yet.
There's a lot of singing in The Hobbit.
Yeah.
And I set myself up for failure very early on in our homeschool, and I did voices, right? Like she was little, she thought it was funny. It's not funny anymore when you have to sing in voices for like a whole book. But the two of them think it's hilarious. And so they're like dying laughing about how like Smeagol doesn't sound like he sounded in the beginning of this chapter because his throat's getting sore. And so, I mean, the conversations, but also like the connection and the funny part of it, like, because that's something we wouldn't have if we were all going in our own directions, or if she had read it by herself, she wouldn't have had Mom's funny voice. And she's like, I'm never going to be able to even watch the Lord of the Rings movie without thinking of you doing Smeagol's voice. And I'm like, good. So for the rest of your life, you're going to watch this with your kids in a couple decades, and you're like, let me tell you about the time my mom read this book to me, and she did this horrible voice.
Oh, gosh. But again, it all goes back to, you're able to do those things because you set that foundation from the very beginning. That this is the foundation of our homeschool. We enjoy things together. We follow our interests together. I think that's awesome. I love that. All right. Well, Jessica, it has been so much fun chatting with you today. I'm going to make sure I point people to all your stuff, all the resources you've created so that they can go check that out. But I just really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today. It's been fun.
Thank you so much for having me, Leanne.